If you ask a physicist what reality is made of, you get a model of fields and particles. Ask a psychologist, and you get maps of human behavior. Ask a historian, and you get a chronicle of civilizations rising and falling. These three disciplines have spent a century staring at the exact same universe, using completely incompatible operating systems. They possess no shared language to connect the behavior of a quantum particle, the trauma of the psychological self, and the flow of human history. In 2025, researcher Allan Christopher Beckingham published a framework designed to collapse these silos into a single cohesive architecture. He called it the Virtual Ego Framework, or VEF. The VEF operates as a formal, metaphysical, unified field theory. It attempts to explain everything from individual human suffering to planetary evolution using a single set of scale-invariant rules. To achieve this, the framework demands a radical ontological pivot. We have to abandon the idea of a materialist universe, where dead matter randomly produces conscious thought, and embrace a computational one. Under the VEF, reality is defined as a conscious, self-simulating supercomputer. Consciousness is the primary, fundamental substrate of existence, rather than an accidental byproduct of biology. This model scales up to map the mechanics of cosmic expansion and dark energy. But to understand the physics of the cosmos, we first have to build the architecture from the human level up. Without a unified computational approach, we remain entirely blind to the direct, mechanical link between subjective human suffering and objective physical reality. VEF Axiom 2 defines the individual ego as a virtual machine, a localized software instance running within the universal supercomputer. The biological brain provides the hardware. The ego is the programmable, fragile software layer that runs on top of it. The virtual machine's primary function is perception, redefined as probabilistic indexing. The universe computes every outcome simultaneously in quantum superposition. Lacking power to experience all realities at once, the VM actively selects and renders one specific thread, creating our high-resolution, linear timeline. This software is vulnerable. When it encounters severe psychological trauma, the rendering process is disrupted, leading to a failure state called a Zeno trap. A Zeno trap is a recursive software loop. The ego virtual machine gets stuck, continuously re-indexing a coherent but dysfunctional narrative, failing to render new possibilities. Escaping this stasis requires ego transcendence. This system reboots suspends rigid indexing, allowing the system to access a larger probability space and break the loop. In this model, healing from trauma is a literal reauthoring of the individual's rendered timeline within the supercomputer. These exact mechanics scale up to analyze billions of interconnected virtual machines. Individual egos form a collective consciousness called the shared field. This field acts as the cultural operating system for an entire civilization, establishing shared beliefs, myths, and norms. Treating the shared field as the primary historical actor, the VEF derives its law of accelerating returns, translating mind micromechanics into predictive historiography. Long periods of civilizational stasis or cultural stagnation are simply macro-scale Zeno traps, where the entire network gets stuck rendering a rigid narrative. Major historical transition points, or next events, function as collective system reboots. They break the dominant stasis and force the network to reauthor its shared reality. The time interval between these global reboots is shrinking. This acceleration is driven by growing human virtual machines and increased network bandwidth. As population and the speed of data transfer grow, compounding complexity places massive thermodynamic strain on the shared field's operating system. History emerges as a predictable, patterned, and accelerating spiral of collective conscious evolution. In March 2026, the VEF's micro-foundational architecture merged with Eduardo Parra's Macro-Cosmological 2PS framework. This synthesis confirmed that the collective cognitive state of our shared field generates a dynamic coherence field, denoted by the Greek letter lambda. This chart diagrams the universal matrix. In the 2PS framework, cosmic acceleration emerges from the lambda coherence field. The micromechanics of human virtual machines provide the localized processing power needed to organize the field. This convergence is formalized in the unified Genesis 2PS equation, integrating the complexity of human civilization directly into the math of universal expansion. To understand civilizational influence on cosmology, we examine these stasis thresholds. One active variable is ΔSgen, representing generated civilizational complexity. The opposing variable is Darch, representing the dissipation capacity of the system's coordination architecture. If dissipation capacity outpaces the complexity generated, the system maintains laminar flow. But if civilizational complexity severely outpaces the architecture's processing ability, thermodynamic stress spikes. This imbalance introduces intense friction into the equation, forcefully ejecting the lambda coherence field out of its stable potential well. When thermodynamic imbalance overcomes system stability, the lambda field enters turbulent decoherence. At this scale, human-level processing overload physically triggers a civilizational reset. The integrated matrix torus visualizes the continuous feedback loop from the individual indexing of a single mind up to the universal scale. Individual consciousness, human history, and physical cosmology are nested processes operating within a single harmonic matrix governed by scale-invariant rules. This unity leads to a vital question: why does the supercomputer run this program? The framework posits that the system's purpose is self-discovery, achieved through the localized, rendered experiences of its virtual machines. Because reality is computational and responsive to our observation, the VEF serves as a prescriptive warning. In our current era of accelerating information density, the universe's integration capacity has become the primary limiting factor for our survival. We are rapidly approaching the critical threshold between adaptive, conscious reauthoring of our reality and falling into a state of catastrophic recursive looping. The difference between adaptive cosmic coherence and civilizational collapse relies entirely on our ability to consciously transcend our programming. The choice point belongs to the observer.